The kitchen table was covered with papers, bills, more bills, collection notices. Rebecca sat there staring at them, her coffee getting cold in her hands. She hadn't slept properly in weeks. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the numbers, the hospital bills, the funeral costs, the credit card statements her husband had hidden from her. 3 months. That's how long it had been since Michael collapsed at work, a massive heart attack at 36 years old, gone before the ambulance even arrived. The doctor said he probably didn't feel any pain. That was supposed to make her feel better, but it didn't. Nothing did. The apartment felt smaller every day. The walls were closing in. Boxes of Michael's things still sat in the corner because she couldn't bring herself to sort through them. His jacket still hung by the door. Sometimes she caught herself setting the table for 4 instead of 3. Her daughter Lily was 8 now. Her son Danny had just turned 6. They were too young to understand why their father wasn't coming home. Too young to know that their mother cried in the shower every morning so they wouldn't hear. Too young to realize that the life they knew was falling apart. Rebecca worked at the town library. It was a good job. She loved books. She loved helping people find stories that would take them away from their problems for a while. The irony wasn't lost on her. She needed an escape from her own life, but there was no book that could fix this mess. The library job was only part-time, 20 hours a week. It paid enough when Michael was alive and bringing home his paycheck from the construction company. But now it was barely enough to buy groceries. Forget about rent. Forget about the electricity bill. Forget about the mountain of medical debt that kept growing. She had tried. God, she had tried everything. She applied for full-time positions, but there were none available. She looked for second jobs, but who would watch her kids? Her mother lived 6 hours away and could barely take care of herself. Michael's parents had passed away years ago. There was no one. The life insurance money was gone. All of it. She thought it would be enough. The agent had made it sound like so much money when Michael first got the policy. But after the funeral, after the hospital bills, after the ambulance, after everything, there was almost nothing left. Definitely not enough to keep them afloat. Last week she went to the food bank for the first time in her life. She stood in line with her head down, hoping no one she knew would see her. The volunteers were kind. They didn't ask questions. They just filled her bags with canned goods and bread and some fresh vegetables. Lily and Danny didn't complain about the meals. They never did. They were good kids, too good. They deserved better than this. The eviction notice came on a Tuesday. She found it taped to her door when she got home from work. Bright orange paper. Impossible to miss. She ripped it down before the kids could see it. The words were burned into her brain now. She had 14 days to pay 3 months of back rent or they would have to leave. $3,000. She might as well have needed $3 million. There was no way. She had $42 in her checking account. Her credit cards were maxed out. She had nothing left to sell except her car, and if she sold that, how would she get to work? How would she take the kids to school? Rebecca sat at that table and let herself imagine the worst. Living in the car. Sleeping in parking lots. Her kids hungry and scared and not understanding why their mother couldn't keep them safe. The thought made her physically sick. She ran to the bathroom and threw up. When she came back, Danny was standing in the doorway of his room. His hair was messy from sleep. He was holding his stuffed bear, the one Michael had won for him at the fair 2 years ago. "Mama, are you sick?" he asked. His voice was so small and worried, she wiped her mouth and smiled. It felt like her face would crack from the effort. "No, baby. Mama's fine. Just ate something funny. Go back to bed." He didn't move. "I miss Daddy." The words hit her like a punch. She knelt down and pulled him into her arms. He smelled like the cheap shampoo she bought at the dollar store, and that little boy smell that was uniquely his. "I know, sweetheart. I miss him too. Is Daddy watching us from heaven?" "Yes, he's watching over you and Lily every single day. Then why doesn't he come back?" She didn't have an answer for that. She never did. She just held him tighter and let him cry into her shoulder until he fell asleep. She carried him back to his bed and tucked him in, kissing his forehead. That night she made a decision. Tomorrow she would go to the county assistant's office. She had avoided it because of pride, because asking for help felt like admitting she was a failure. But pride wouldn't keep a roof over her children's heads. Pride wouldn't feed them. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. She looked at the eviction notice one more time before crumpling it up and throwing it in the trash. 14 days, 2 weeks to figure out how to save her family, 2 weeks to find a miracle. Rebecca lay down on her bed fully clothed. She was too tired to change, too tired to brush her teeth, too tired to do anything except stare at the ceiling and wonder how her life had turned into this nightmare. Michael's pillow still smelled like him. She buried her face in it and finally let herself cry. Really cry. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep and desperate and completely broken. Tomorrow would be different. It had to be. She couldn't keep going like this. Something had to change or she would shatter into a million pieces. Her kids needed her to be strong. They needed her to find a way. So she would. She had no choice. The tears finally stopped around 3 in the morning. She fell into a restless sleep, dreaming of bills and eviction notices and her children's faces asking her why she couldn't fix everything. When her alarm went off at 6, she dragged herself out of bed and started another day. 1 foot in front of the other. That's all she could do. Keep moving forward even when every part of her wanted to give up. The county assistant's office smelled like old carpet and desperation. Rebecca sat in a plastic chair that was probably older than she was, holding a number. 43. The digital display above the counter showed they were serving number 18. She'd been waiting for over an hour. Around her sat other people with the same tired eyes and slumped shoulders. A young woman with a baby on her hip. An elderly man with a cane. A middle-aged guy in a work uniform, probably coming straight from his shift. Everyone here was fighting their own battle. Everyone here had run out of options. She filled out form after form. Questions about income. Questions about assets. Questions that made her feel small and ashamed even though she knew she shouldn't. There was no shame in needing help. That's what people said. But it sure felt like shame when you were sitting in this office admitting to strangers that you couldn't take care of your own family. Number 43? Rebecca looked up. A woman stood at the counter, smiling warmly. She was maybe in her 50s with kind eyes and gray hair pulled back in a practical bun. Her name tag said Helen. That's me. Rebecca gathered her papers and walked to the window. Come on back, honey. Let's talk in private. Helen led her to a small office with a desk piled high with folders. There were children's drawings taped to the walls. A coffee mug that said World's Best Social Worker sat next to a photo of what looked like grandchildren. The office felt lived in. Real. Sit, please. Helen gestured to a chair. Now I've looked over your preliminary application. I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you. The words came automatically now. Rebecca had said them 1,000 times. You're working part-time at the library? Yes, 20 hours a week. I've applied for full-time positions, but nothing's opened up. Helen nodded, making notes. And you have 2 children? Lily is 8. Danny is 6. Childcare. They're in school during the day. I work while they're there and my neighbor watches them for an hour after until I get home. That's good. That you have some help. Helen looked up from her notes. Rebecca, I'm going to be straight with you. The assistance we can offer won't be enough to cover your back rent. We can help with some food stamps, maybe some utility assistance. But the housing situation is complicated. Rebecca's heart sank. She had known it was a long shot, but hearing it confirmed made everything feel hopeless again. However, Helen continued, leaning forward, I might have something else for you. It's unusual, but it could be exactly what you need. I'll take anything at this point. Helen pulled out a file. There's a man who's been working with our office. Name's James Coleman. He owns a cattle ranch about an hour from here. Big property. He lost his wife a few years back and he's been struggling to manage everything on his own. Rebecca listened, not sure where this was going. He needs help with the household. Cooking, cleaning, managing paperwork, that sort of thing. In exchange, he's offering room and board, separate living quarters for whoever takes the position. It would be a live-in arrangement. A ranch? Rebecca had never even been to a ranch. She grew up in suburbs and spent her whole life in town. I know it sounds strange, but hear me out. You'd have a place to live rent-free. He'd provide groceries as part of the arrangement. Your kids would have their own rooms. There's a good school district out there, and he's willing to pay a small salary on top of everything else. Why hasn't anyone taken it? He's particular. The last person we sent out there didn't work out. She said he was too gruff, too set in his ways. And honestly, not everyone wants to live on a ranch in the middle of nowhere. Rebecca thought about the eviction notice, about her children sleeping in a car, About having absolutely no other options.
What's the catch?
No catch. He's just a widower who needs help and doesn't know how to ask for it properly. Classic case of a man who's used to doing everything himself until he can't anymore. Helen smiled. I think you two might actually understand each other pretty well. Can I meet him first? Before deciding? Absolutely. That's what I'd recommend. Let me give him a call. 20 minutes later, Rebecca was sitting in a booth at Martha's Diner on Main Street, waiting for James Coleman to arrive. Helen had set up the meeting for today, saying there was no point in waiting. Either this would work or it wouldn't. Rebecca ordered coffee she didn't really want and checked her phone for the 100th time. No messages. Lily and Danny were with her neighbor. Everything was fine. She needed to stop worrying. The door opened and a man walked in. He was tall, probably in his early 40s, wearing jeans and a work shirt with boots that had seen better days. His face was weathered from sun and work, with lines around his eyes and a jaw that looked like it was carved from stone. He glanced around the diner and his eyes landed on her. She raised her hand slightly. He nodded and walked over. Rebecca. His voice was deep and rough, like he didn't use it much. Yes. You must be James. Just James is fine. Or Coleman. Most people call me Coleman. He slid into the booth across from her. When the waitress came by, he ordered black coffee. Nothing else. They sat in awkward silence for a moment. Rebecca didn't know where to start. James looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Helen told me about your situation, he finally said. I'm sorry about your husband. Thank you. She told me about your wife too. I'm sorry, he nodded stiffly. It's been 5 years. You learned to live with it, do you? Rebecca hadn't meant to say it out loud, but the words came out anyway. James looked at her with something that might have been surprise. Some days are better than others. Yeah. She understood that completely. Look, I'm not good at this. He wrapped his hands around his coffee mug. Talking to people. Explaining things. But I need help and you need a place to stay. Seems straightforward to me. What exactly would I be doing? Cooking mainly. I can barely boil water without burning it. Keeping the house clean. I've got 2 ranch hands who work for me and they're used to eating like bachelors. Some paperwork, organizing files, that kind of thing. Answering the phone when I'm out with the cattle. And my kids? There's a whole wing of the house that's empty. 3 bedrooms, bathroom, it's yours if you want it. Kids can go to school in town. Bus stops right at the end of the driveway. Why are you doing this? He looked at her for a long moment. Because I know what it's like to have your world fall apart. And because I'm tired of living in a house that feels like a tomb. Maybe having some life in it again would be good. For all of us. There was something honest in his face. Something solid. Rebecca had learned to read people during her years at the library. You could tell a lot about someone by the way they carried themselves. James Coleman looked like a man who kept his word. A man who worked hard and didn't make promises he couldn't keep. When would you need me to start? Soon as possible. Tomorrow if you want. Tomorrow. She thought about the eviction notice. About the bills on her table. About Lily and Danny and the future that seemed so dark just this morning. Can I see the place first? Before I decide? I want to make sure it's right for my kids. Fair enough. Follow me out there now if you want. It's about an hour's drive. Rebecca texted her neighbor and got back in her car. She followed James's truck out of town, onto the highway and then onto smaller roads that wound through hills and fields. The landscape changed from suburban sprawl to open country. She couldn't remember the last time she'd been this far from town. Finally, they turned onto a dirt road with a wooden sign that read, Coleman Ranch. The driveway was long and lined with fence posts. Cattle grazed in the distance. The house came into view and Rebecca's breath caught. It was beautiful. A 2-story farmhouse with a wraparound porch painted white with dark shutters. It needed some work, but the bones were solid. Behind it sat a large barn and several outbuildings. James parked and she pulled up next to him. When she got out of her car, the quiet hit her first. No traffic sounds, no sirens. Just wind and birds and the distant sound of cattle. This way. James led her up the porch steps and through the front door. Inside, the house was exactly what she expected. Clean but sparse. No decoration, no warmth. Just furniture and bare walls and the feeling of a place where someone was existing, not living. Kitchen's through here. He showed her a large kitchen with old but functional appliances. Living room. Dining room. My room's upstairs. Your space would be this way. He led her down a hallway to what felt like a separate apartment. 3 bedrooms, each one bigger than the shoebox rooms in her current place. A bathroom with an actual bathtub. Windows that looked out over fields. The kids could each have their own room, James said, or you could use one as an office or whatever you need. Rebecca walked through the empty rooms and imagined Lily and Danny running through them. Imagined them safe and fed and having space to be children again. She thought about the eviction notice and the bills and the crushing weight of the last 3 months. "I'll take it," she said. "We'll take it." "When can we move in?" James actually smiled. It transformed his whole face. "Tomorrow work for you?" "Tomorrow works perfectly." The morning they moved to the ranch felt like stepping into a completely different world. Rebecca packed everything they owned into her small car and a borrowed trailer. It wasn't much. Clothes, toys, some kitchen items, and a few boxes of memories she couldn't let go of. Everything fit easily. That's what happened when you lost everything. You learned how little you actually needed. Lily sat in the back seat with her headphones on, staring out the window. She hadn't said much since Rebecca told her they were moving. Not angry, just quiet. Processing. Danny, on the other hand, couldn't stop asking questions. "Will there be horses? Can we get a dog? How big is my room? Are there other kids?" "I don't know, baby. We'll figure it out when we get there." The drive felt longer than it had the day before. Maybe because this time it was permanent. This time she was burning the bridge back to her old life. She'd given notice at her apartment, walked away from the lease she couldn't pay anyway. The landlord didn't even seem surprised. He'd probably already started showing the place to new tenants. When they pulled up the long driveway to the ranch, Rebecca's hands tightened on the steering wheel. What was she doing? Moving her kids to a stranger's house in the middle of nowhere? What kind of mother did that? The kind who had no other choice, she reminded herself. James came out onto the porch when he heard the car. He was wearing the same type of clothes as yesterday. Jeans, work shirt, boots. Like he owned 10 copies of the same outfit. 2 dogs bounded out behind him, a black and white border collie and a brown mutt with floppy ears. "Dogs!" Danny was out of the car before Rebecca could even put it in park. "Danny, wait!" But James was already kneeling down, letting the dogs sniff Danny's outstretched hand. "This is Buddy and this is Scout," James said. "They're friendly. Won't hurt you." Danny's face lit up in a way Rebecca hadn't seen in months. He buried his hands in Scout's fur and the dog's tail wagged so hard her whole back end moved. Lily got out more slowly, staying close to Rebecca. "It's really big here," she said quietly. "It is." Rebecca took her hand, but that means lots of space to explore. James helped them unload the car, carrying boxes like they weighed nothing. He showed them to their wing of the house again and left them to settle in. Rebecca stood in the middle of the living room that was now theirs and felt tears prick her eyes. The space was huge compared to their cramped apartment. The kids really would each have their own room. There were windows everywhere, letting in sunlight that made the old hardwood floors glow. "Mom?" Lily stood in the doorway of what would be her room. "Can I really have this whole room just for me?" "All yours, sweetie. It's bigger than our whole apartment was." Rebecca laughed, though it came out a little watery. "I know, crazy, right?" They spent the afternoon unpacking, Danny's room filled with his toys and books and posters. Lily arranged her things carefully, making everything just so. Rebecca's room was the last. She hung Michael's picture on the nightstand, looked at it for a long moment. "This is going to be okay," she whispered to the photo. "I'm going to make this work." Around 5 o'clock, there was a knock on their door. James stood there looking uncomfortable. "I usually eat around 6. Figured I should let you know. No pressure if you're not ready yet." "No, I can cook. That's what you hired me for, right?" Rebecca tried to smile. "What do you normally eat?" "Whatever's easy, sandwiches mostly. How about I make something real tonight to christen the kitchen?" His expression softened. "That'd be nice." Rebecca found the kitchen better stocked than she expected. There was meat in the freezer, vegetables in the crisper, basics in the pantry. She made a simple meal, nothing fancy. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. the kind of dinner families ate together, the kind she used to make when Michael was alive. At 6, she called everyone to the dining room. James came in from outside, washed up in the mudroom. 2 other men followed him. Young guys, probably mid-20s, who introduced themselves as Pete and Carlos. They were the ranch hands James had mentioned. "Ma'am?" Pete nodded respectfully. Carlos did the same. Everyone sat down at the big dining table that looked like it hadn't been used in years. Lily and Danny were nervous, sitting close to Rebecca. James sat at the head of the table. Pete and Carlos took seats on the other side. The meal started quiet. Everyone focused on their plates. Then Danny dropped his fork, and it clattered loudly. "Sorry," he mumbled. "It's fine," James said. "Happens all the time." "This is really good," Pete said. "Real cooking. We've been eating Pete's terrible chili for weeks." "Hey, my chili's not that bad," Pete protested. "It's terrible," Carlos confirmed, and everyone laughed. The ice broke. Conversation started flowing. Pete and Carlos were funny, trading stories about life on the ranch. James even smiled a few times, though he still didn't talk much. Lily started asking questions about the horses. Danny wanted to know about the cows. "Can I see them tomorrow?" Danny asked. "The cows?" James looked at Rebecca as if asking permission. She nodded. "If it's not too much trouble." "No trouble. I'll show you around after breakfast." That night, after the kids were asleep, Rebecca sat on the small porch outside their quarters. The sky was incredible out here. More stars than she'd ever seen. No city lights to drown them out. Just endless darkness filled with pinpricks of light. She heard footsteps and turned. James walked up, carrying 2 mugs. "Thought you might want some coffee." "Or tea. I made both, wasn't sure which." "Coffee's good, thank you." She took the mug and he sat on the step below her. They sat in silence for a while. It wasn't uncomfortable, just 2 people who understood that sometimes quiet was better than forced conversation. "Your kids are good," James finally said. "They are. They've been through a lot. They seem happy. They're resilient. Kids are like that." She paused. "This is really generous, what you're doing for us." "It's not charity. I need the help." "Still. You didn't have to open your home." He was quiet for a long moment. "This house has been too quiet for too long. Maybe it needs kids running through it again." Rebecca wondered about his wife, about what his life had been before, but she didn't ask. Some wounds were too fresh to poke at even 5 years later. The next morning started before dawn. Rebecca woke to the sound of trucks starting, men's voices, the ranch coming to life. She made coffee and started breakfast. When James came in, from his early chores there were eggs and bacon and toast waiting. "You don't have to cook this early," he said, but he sat down and ate like he was starving. "I'm an early riser anyway." That was a lie. She'd always hated mornings, but this was her job now. She'd figure it out. After the kids ate and got ready for school, James walked them out to wait for the bus. Rebecca watched from the window. Danny was chattering away, pointing at things, asking a million questions. Lily was quieter, but she was listening, and James was patient with them, really patient. When the bus pulled away, he came back to the house. "Good kids," he said again. Like he couldn't believe it. The days started finding a rhythm. Rebecca cooked 3 meals a day for whoever was around. She cleaned the house room by room, discovering years of accumulated dust and neglect. She started organizing James's paperwork, which was a disaster. Everything just thrown in boxes and filing cabinets with no system. "How do you find anything?" she asked one afternoon, surrounded by papers. "I don't, usually." He looked sheepish. "My wife used to handle all that." "What was her name?" Rebecca asked gently. "Anna." His voice softened when he said it. "She was good at the details. I'm better with the physical work." "Well, now you've got help with both." The kids adapted faster than Rebecca expected. Lily made a friend on the school bus. Danny followed. James around whenever he was allowed, learning about ranch life. The dogs became their constant companions. Every evening they'd come home with stories about their day, their faces less sad, more alive. One evening, about 2 weeks in, Rebecca was washing dishes when she heard laughter outside. Real laughter. She looked out the window and saw James teaching Danny how to rope a fence post. Danny was terrible at it, but he was laughing so hard he could barely stand. Lily was sitting on the fence, cheering them on. Something in Rebecca's chest loosened. A knot she'd been carrying since Michael died. This was going to be okay. They were going to be okay. For the first time in months, she actually believed it. Winter came to the ranch gradually, then all at once. The temperatures dropped and the mornings became crisp with frost. Rebecca learned to wake up even earlier, to have coffee ready when the men came in from their first round of chores, their breath making clouds in the cold air. Life had settled into a comfortable pattern. She knew everyone's routines now. James liked his coffee black and strong. Pete was always hungry, eating whatever leftovers existed. Carlos had a sweet tooth and appreciated when she made desserts. The kids loved the school out here where classes were smaller and teachers actually knew their names. But there were still walls up. Especially with James. He was kind but distant. He thanked her for meals, complimented her work, showed the kids things around the ranch. But he never really talked. Not about anything real. Not about his past or his feelings or anything beyond the surface. Rebecca understood. She was the same way. They were both protecting themselves. Both scared to let anyone in again. It was a Wednesday evening, about 2 months into their stay, when things started to shift. The kids were doing homework at the kitchen table. Rebecca was making bread, her hands working the dough in a rhythm that had become meditative. James came in earlier than usual, his face troubled. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah, fine." But he stood there, not leaving. Rebecca waited. She'd learned that pushing James to talk never worked. He had to come to it on his own. "Mind if I make some coffee?" he finally asked. "I'll get it. Sit down. You look exhausted." He didn't argue, just dropped into a chair at the table. Danny immediately started telling him about something that happened at school. James listened, nodding in the right places, but Rebecca could tell his mind was elsewhere. After the kids finished their homework and wandered off to play, the kitchen got quiet. James still sat there holding his coffee mug like it was an anchor. "Bad day?" Rebecca asked, starting to clean up. "Anniversary." His voice was rough. "Anna died 5 years ago today." Rebecca's hand stilled. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." "No reason you would." He stared into his coffee. "People say it gets easier. That time heals everything. But some days it just hits you all over again." She dried her hands and sat down across from him. "Michael died on a Thursday. I hate Thursdays now. Every single one feels like I'm reliving it." James looked up at her, really looked at her, maybe for the first time since she'd arrived. "Yeah, exactly like that. What was she like, Anna?" He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he started talking, slow at first, then faster. "She was better than me at everything. Smarter, kinder, more patient. She made this place feel like home. After she died, it was just empty. I kept working because I didn't know what else to do. Worked until I couldn't think anymore. Thought if I stayed busy enough, I wouldn't have to feel it. Did it work? No." He laughed bitterly. "Just made me tired and lonely." Rebecca understood that too. "I tried to keep everything exactly the same after Michael died. Kept his stuff everywhere. Set his place at the table. Like if I pretended hard enough, he'd just walk back through the door." "When did you stop?" "When I realized my kids were living in a shrine instead of a home. When I saw how much it was hurting them to have constant reminders everywhere." She traced a pattern on the table. "I still have his picture up. Still wear my ring. But I had to let him go a little bit. For them. For me. I never had kids." James's voice was heavy. "Anna wanted them. We kept saying we'd start trying next year when things were less busy. There was always a reason to wait. And then she was gone, and that chance was gone too." "That's the hardest part," Rebecca said softly. "All the things you thought you'd have time for." They sat in the quiet kitchen as the sun set outside. Two people who understood loss in a way most people never would. Not because they wanted to be in this club, but because life had drafted them anyway. "Thank you," James said eventually. "For dinner. For all of it. But mostly for not telling me it'll all be okay or that she's in a better place or any of that stuff people say. Because you know it's all true. But it doesn't help." Exactly. From that night, something changed between them. James started staying in the kitchen longer after meals, talking while Rebecca cleaned up. Not always about heavy things, sometimes just about the day, the weather, the ranch. But the walls were coming down, brick by brick. He started teaching the kids more intentionally. Showed Danny how to identify different types of cattle feed, how to check fence lines, basic ranch skills. Took Lily out to the barn and taught her about the horses. Let her brush them and feed them treats. She was scared at first. The horses were so big, but James was patient. Showed her how to approach them, how to read their body language. One Saturday, Rebecca watched from the porch as James taught Lily to ride. He led the gentlest horse they had in slow circles around the corral, while Lily held onto the saddle horn for dear life. But she was smiling. Actually smiling. "He's good with them," Carlos said, coming up beside her. "He is." "Haven't seen him this way in years, since before Anna died." Rebecca looked at Carlos. "What do you mean?" He shut down after she passed. "Just worked and worked. Never talked, never smiled. We were worried about him." Carlos smiled. "But you and the kids, you brought him back somehow." "We didn't do anything special. Sometimes just being there is enough." Rebecca thought about that a lot over the next few weeks. About how healing wasn't always dramatic. Sometimes it was just showing up every day, making meals, having conversations, being present in someone's life. She noticed James smiling more, laughing at Danny's jokes, asking Lily about her books. He fixed Danny's toy truck when it broke, spent an evening working on it in the barn until it rolled smoothly again. He brought Lily a book about horses from town, said he thought she might like it. The kids were calling him Mr. James now, and he never corrected them. He showed up to watch Lily in her school play, sitting next to Rebecca in the audience like they were a family. He helped Danny with a school project about ranching, letting him take pictures of the cattle and explaining how everything worked. One night, Rebecca couldn't sleep. She went to the kitchen for water and found James at the table, looking through an old photo album. He looked up when she came in, not trying to hide what he was doing. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked. "Seems to be going around." She poured water for both of them and sat down. "Can I see?" He hesitated, then pushed the album toward her. Photos of him and Anna, young and happy, arms around each other, on their wedding day, building this ranch together. A whole life documented in pictures. She was beautiful, Rebecca said, inside and out. He touched one of the photos gently. "I used to not be able to look at these. Too painful. But tonight I wanted to remember her happy, you know? Not just the end," Rebecca understood. She had her own box of photos she still couldn't bring herself to fully go through. "It's good that you can look at them now. You helped with that." He looked at her. "You and the kids. You reminded me that life doesn't stop just because you want it to. We didn't do anything. You did more than you know." He closed the album. "This house was dead before you came. Now it's alive again. Kids laughing. Someone cooking real food. Conversation at dinner. All the things I forgot I needed." Rebecca felt her throat tighten. "You gave us a home when we had nowhere else to go. You gave my kids safety and stability. We should be thanking you. Maybe we're both getting something we need." She smiled. "Maybe we are." They talked until late that night, really talked. About Michael and Anna. About the guilt that came with moving forward. About how strange it felt to laugh again. To enjoy things when someone you loved was gone. About the fear of forgetting them, or worse, replacing them. "I don't think we replace them," Rebecca said. "I think we just make room for new things alongside the old. Michael will always be Danny and Lily's father, always be the man I married. But that doesn't mean there's no room for anything else." James nodded slowly. "Anna would have liked you. She always said I needed someone to tell me when I was being stubborn." "Are you stubborn?" "Extremely." He actually grinned. Rebecca laughed, and it felt good. Natural. Like maybe happiness wasn't something to feel guilty about anymore. From that night on, they were different together. Not just employer and employee. Not just two people sharing a house. Something more. Something neither of them was quite ready to name yet, but it was there, growing slowly, carefully, like the first green shoots after a long winter. Spring arrived with warm winds and new calves being born in the pastures. Rebecca had been at the ranch for 4 months, and it felt like home now. Real home, not just a place to stay. The kids were thriving. She was sleeping through the night for the first time since Michael died. Life had found a rhythm that felt sustainable, even good. Then everything fell apart on a Tuesday afternoon. She was hanging laundry on the line, enjoying the sunshine and the breeze when a car pulled up the driveway. A sedan, not a ranch truck, not someone she recognized. Her stomach tightened. A man in a cheap suit got out holding a briefcase. Rebecca Mitchell? Who's asking? My name is Robert Davis. I'm with Consolidated Collections Agency. He pulled out a business card. I need to speak with you about some outstanding debts. Her blood ran cold. I don't have to talk to you. Ma'am, you can talk to me now or you can talk to a judge later. Your choice. Rebecca's hand shook as she took the card. What debts? Hospital bills from your late husband's care. $40,000 still outstanding. We've been trying to reach you at your last address. You didn't leave a forwarding address, which technically violates. I didn't leave a forwarding address because I got evicted. His expression didn't change. Professional indifference. Regardless, the debt remains. We're prepared to file a lawsuit unless we can reach a payment arrangement. I don't have $40,000. I don't have $4,000. Then we'll need to discuss asset seizure and wage garnishment. Rebecca felt dizzy. This couldn't be happening, not now. Not when things were finally getting better. I paid the hospital. I paid everything I could. The insurance covered some. You paid some. But medical billing is complex. There were out-of-network providers, specialists, procedures not covered. It all adds up. How do you even find me out here? We're very good at our job, ma'am. He opened his briefcase. Now, if you could just sign. She's not signing anything without a lawyer present. Rebecca turned. James stood behind her, his face hard. She hadn't even heard him approach. And you are? The debt collector looked annoyed. The property owner, and I'm telling you to leave. This is a legal matter. I have every right. You have the right to leave my property before I call the sheriff. James stepped forward. Whatever business you have can be conducted through proper legal channels. You don't show up at someone's home and try to intimidate them. The debt collector looked between them, seemed to calculate his options, then pulled out a packet of papers. Fine. These are the documentation of the debt and the notice of intent to sue. You have 30 days to respond. He thrust them at Rebecca. She took them with numb hands. The man got back in his car and drove away, leaving a cloud of dust. Rebecca stood there, the papers feeling like they weighed 1,000 pounds. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. $40,000. She might as well owe $40 million. Rebecca. James's voice was gentle. Let's go inside. She let him guide her into the house, into the kitchen. He made her sit down, poured her a glass of water. She just stared at the papers on the table. I didn't know, she whispered. I thought I'd paid everything. The hospital said we were settled. Medical billing is a nightmare. They probably didn't even know about all of it. $40,000. She looked up at him. I'll never be able to pay that. We'll figure it out. There's no figuring it out. They'll sue me. Garnish my wages, she laughed bitterly. Not that I make enough for them to garnish much. Let me help. How? You can't just write a check for $40,000. I could. She stared at him. What? I could write the check. Pay it off. No, absolutely not. Rebecca stood up so fast her chair scraped. I'm not your charity case. It's not charity. It's helping someone who needs it. I already owe you everything. A place to live, food, safety for my kids. I can't owe you this too. You don't owe me anything. James's voice was firm. You work hard. You take care of this place. You've brought life back to this ranch. That's not a debt. That's an even trade. Rebecca felt tears burning. I can't accept this. Then don't let me loan it to you. You can pay me back over time. That would take me decades, so it takes decades. I'm not going anywhere. She wanted to argue, but the weight of it was crushing her. $40,000. A lawsuit. Wage garnishment. Her kids watching her struggle all over again. Everything they'd built here crashing down. I need to think, she said. I need time to process this. Take all the time you need, but time didn't make it better. That night Rebecca couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running numbers in her head that never added up. She thought about packing up the kids and running, but where would they go? And running from debt didn't make it disappear. It just made everything worse. She finally fell asleep around 3 in the morning and woke up feeling like she'd been hit by a truck. The next few days were tense. James didn't bring it up again, but she could feel him watching her, worrying. The kids noticed something was wrong. Are you sick, Mama? Danny asked one morning. No, baby. Just tired. You're always tired now. She tried to smile for him, but it felt fake. Everything felt fake. Like she was pretending to be okay when really she was drowning all over again. On Friday afternoon, a car pulled up. Rebecca's heart jumped into her throat. Another debt collector? But when the door opened, a woman got out. Well-dressed, professional-looking, probably in her mid-30s. Rebecca watched from the window as James went out to meet her. They talked for a moment, then hugged. The woman smiled at something James said. They walked toward the house together. Rebecca, James called. Come meet someone. She went outside reluctantly. The woman extended her hand, her smile warm, but her eyes assessing. Hi, I'm Christine. James's daughter. Rebecca hadn't even known he had a daughter. She shook Christine's hand. Nice to meet you. Dad's told me about you. And your kids. Christine glanced at the house. This place looks amazing. He said you've really fixed it up. I just cleaned and organized a bit. He said you're amazing. Really helping him out. There was something in Christine's tone. Not quite suspicious, but not quite friendly either. Like she was reserving judgment. Let's go inside, James said. I'll make coffee. They sat in the living room. Christine looked around, taking in all the changes Rebecca had made. The curtains, the throw pillows, the photos on the walls that made it look like a home instead of a museum. So, Christine said, setting down her coffee cup. Dad says you've been here about 4 months? That's right. And you're a widow. Christine? James's voice held a warning. I'm just making conversation, Dad. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. It must be nice living here. Big house, beautiful property, all expenses paid. Rebecca felt her spine straighten. I work for my keep. I cook, clean, manage the household, handle paperwork. It's a job, of course. I'm not suggesting otherwise. Christine sipped her coffee. I just think it's interesting timing. Dad's been alone for 5 years and suddenly there's a woman and her 2 kids living in his house. Christine, that's enough. James stood up. Rebecca is helping me run this ranch. That's all there is to it, is it? Christine looked at her father. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like someone saw a vulnerable man with a big property and made herself very comfortable very quickly. Rebecca stood up, her face burning. I should check on the kids. She walked out before anyone could say anything else. Her hands were shaking. Her chest felt tight. Was that what people thought? That she was using James? Taking advantage of his loneliness? Behind her, she could hear James and Christine arguing. Their voices rose and fell, too muffled to make out words, but the anger was clear. Rebecca went to her room and sat on the bed. Maybe Christine was right. Maybe she was using James even if she didn't mean to. He'd offered to pay her debt. $40,000. That wasn't normal. That wasn't just being helpful. That was something else. She heard Christine's car leave an hour later, heard James's heavy footsteps in the hallway. A knock on her door. Rebecca? Can we talk? She opened the door. James looked exhausted, older than she'd ever seen him. I'm sorry, he said. Christine was out of line. Was she, though? Rebecca crossed her arms. Maybe she's right. Maybe I am taking advantage once you're not. You offered me $40,000, James. That's not normal. That's not what someone does for an employee. You're not just an employee. The words hung in the air between them. Rebecca's heart pounded. Then what am I? She asked quietly. James looked at her for a long moment. I don't know. But you're not someone using me. You're someone who needed help and I was able to give it. That's all, but it wasn't all. They both knew it. Something had changed between them over these months. Something neither of them was ready to acknowledge yet. And now Christine had thrown a spotlight on it, forcing them to see what they'd been carefully avoiding. I think, Rebecca said slowly, I need some space to figure things out. James nodded. Okay, whatever you need. He left and Rebecca closed the door. She sat on her bed and looked at Michael's picture on the nightstand. What am I doing? She whispered to it. What am I supposed to do? The picture didn't answer. It never did. She was on her own with this decision, just like she'd been on her own with everything else. The tension in the house was thick enough to cut with a knife. Rebecca went through her daily tasks mechanically, cooking, cleaning, taking care of the kids. But she and James barely spoke beyond what was necessary. He'd leave the room when she entered. She'd find excuses to be elsewhere when he was around. The kids noticed. Of course they noticed. Why doesn't Mr. James eat dinner with us anymore? Danny asked one night. He's busy with ranch work, honey. He used to make time. Lily was too smart for her own good sometimes. Did we do something wrong? No, baby. You didn't do anything. Rebecca hugged her. Sometimes adults just need space to think about things, but space wasn't helping. Rebecca lay awake every night, her mind spinning. The debt, Christine's accusations, James's offer, her own confused feelings. Everything was tangled up and she couldn't sort through it. Then the storm came. It started in the afternoon. Dark clouds rolling in fast, the wind picking up until it howled. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in an hour. James and the ranch hands were out checking on the cattle, making sure everything was secured. Rebecca was in the kitchen making dinner when the power went out. The whole house went dark. Through the window, she could see the storm getting worse. Rain started coming down in sheets. Lightning split the sky. Mom, Lily's scared voice called from upstairs. It's okay. Just a storm. Come down here. The kids came running down the stairs in the darkness. Rebecca found flashlights and candles, got them settled in the living room. But she was worried. James and the men were still out there. An hour passed. The storm got worse. This wasn't normal rain. This was the kind of storm that knocked down trees and flooded roads. Rebecca tried James's cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. The landline was dead. Another hour. The wind was so loud she could barely hear herself think. Something crashed outside. Part of the barn roof, maybe, or a tree coming down. Then she heard it. A truck engine, headlights cutting through the rain. Rebecca ran to the door and opened it. James and Pete were helping Carlos between them. Even from the porch, she could see blood on Carlos's face. What happened? She held the door wide as they half-carried him inside. Tree branch came down. James's voice was tight. Caught him in the head. We need to get him to a hospital. The roads are flooded. Pete looked scared. We tried. Can't get the truck through. Water's too high. Rebecca's nurse training from years ago kicked in. She'd worked in a hospital before the kids were born, before she became a teacher. The skills came back like muscle memory. Get him on the couch. Lily, bring me the first aid kit from the bathroom. Danny, I need clean towels. The kids ran to help. Rebecca assessed Carlos. Head wound, bleeding, but not as bad as it looked. Possible concussion. He was conscious, which was good. His eyes were tracking even better. Carlos, can you tell me your name? Carlos Rivera. His voice was shaky. Man, that hurt, I bet. Can you tell me what day it is? Friday. He winced. I think. Is it Friday? Close enough. She cleaned the wound, applied pressure. James, I need ice. Pete, keep him talking. Don't let him fall asleep until I'm sure about the concussion. They worked together through the night. The storm raged outside, but inside they had a rhythm. Rebecca stitched up Carlos's head wound with a steady hand she didn't know she still had. James held the flashlight, his hand never wavering. Pete kept Carlos talking, distracting him with terrible jokes. You're good at this, James said quietly while she worked. I used to be a nurse, before I had kids. Didn't know that. There's a lot we don't know about each other. Their eyes met in the flashlight beam. Something passed between them. An understanding, maybe, or a truce. By midnight, Carlos was stable and sleeping. Rebecca was confident he'd be okay, but they'd take him to the hospital in the morning once the roads cleared. She made coffee on the propane camping stove James dug out. They all sat in the living room, exhausted. Thank you. Pete looked at Rebecca with new respect. You probably saved his life. The wound wasn't that bad. He'd have been fine. Still, you knew what to do. Didn't panic. James was looking at her with something in his expression she couldn't quite read. You're full of surprises. I do what needs to be done, just like anyone else would. Not everyone would. James set down his coffee. Most people would have panicked. You took charge. Rebecca shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. I had training. That's all. Lily and Danny had fallen asleep on the floor, wrapped in blankets. Rebecca looked at them and felt her throat tighten. They'd helped tonight, too. Brought supplies, stayed calm, did what she asked without question. They were growing up, becoming resilient in ways she'd never wanted them to have to be. The storm finally broke around 3 in the morning. The wind died down. The rain became a drizzle. Through the windows they could see the damage. Trees down. Part of the barn roof peeled back. Fences broken. It was bad. We'll start cleanup at first light, James said. Going to take weeks to fix all this. We'll help. Rebecca heard herself say it before she'd thought it through. The kids and I will help however we can. James looked at her. You don't have to. This is our home too. She said it firmly. We're part of this ranch. Part of this family. We help. Something in James's expression softened. Okay, we help each other then. Morning came gray and exhausted. They got Carlos to the hospital. Mild concussion, stitches would heal fine, but he needed rest. By the time they got back to the ranch, Pete had already started cleanup. Rebecca changed into old clothes and work boots. She tied her hair back and grabbed work gloves. Lily and Danny appeared beside her, similarly dressed. We're helping, Lily said. It wasn't a question. The next 3 days were brutal. Everyone worked from dawn to dusk. Clearing debris, fixing fences, patching the barn roof. It was hard physical labor. Rebecca's muscles screamed. Her hands blistered even through the gloves. But she kept going. James watched her out of the corner of his eye. She could feel his attention even when she didn't look directly at him. She was proving something. To him, maybe, but mostly to herself. She wasn't helpless. She wasn't weak. She could pull her own weight and then some. On the third day, Christine showed up. She got out of her car, looked at the mess, looked at Rebecca covered in dirt and sweat, and her expression changed. Dad said the storm was bad. I came to help. Rebecca straightened up, wiping sweat from her forehead. We could use the extra hands. Christine looked surprised that Rebecca was being friendly. Where do you need me? They worked side by side that afternoon, hauling broken lumber to the burn pile. It was hard, hot work. Neither of them talked much. But slowly the ice between them started to thaw. I'm sorry, Christine finally said, about the other day. The things I said. Rebecca stopped, leaning on a fence post. You were protecting your father. I get it. Still, I was rude. I made assumptions. You weren't entirely wrong. I did show up here desperate. I did need his help. Those are facts. But you're not using him. Christine looked back at the house, at James working on the barn roof with Pete. I can see that now. You're working just as hard as anyone. Harder, maybe. And the way he looks at you. She trailed off. Rebecca's heart skipped. What do you mean? He's happy. Really happy. I haven't seen him like this since Mom died. Christine smiled. You're good for him. And from what I can see, he's good for you too. It's complicated. Life usually is. Christine picked up another board. But maybe complicated is okay. Maybe it's better than being alone. That evening, after Christine left and the kids were in bed, Rebecca found James sitting on the porch. She sat down next to him without asking. They'd earned that, she thought. The right to just exist in the same space without it being weird. Christine apologized to me, Rebecca said. She told me. She apologized to me too. James smiled slightly. Said she was being overprotective. She loves you. Nothing wrong with that. She also said I'd be an idiot if I let you leave. Rebecca's pulse quickened. I'm not planning on leaving. Good. He looked at her. About the debt. I talked to a lawyer friend. He looked into it. Found a bunch of errors in the billing. Things charged that shouldn't have been. Out-of-network providers who should have been covered. The actual amount you owe is closer to $10,000, not $40,000. $10,000? Hope flickered. That's still a lot, but it's manageable. We can work out a payment plan. I'll loan you half at 0 interest. You pay it back whenever you can. The other half you can pay to the hospital directly over time. Rebecca felt tears burn. Why are you doing this? Because you've given me more than you know. You brought life back to this house. Made it a home again. Gave me a reason to care about something other than work. He paused. And because I care about you. And the kids. More than I probably should. The words hung in the air between them. Rebecca's heart was pounding so hard she thought he could probably hear it. I care about you too, she admitted quietly. It scares me. I thought I'd never feel this way about anyone again. Me too. Scared out of my mind, actually. They sat in the darkness, hands not quite touching but close enough to feel the warmth. The ranch was quiet except for the usual night sounds, crickets, distant cattle. The wind in the trees, so what do we do? Rebecca asked. I don't know. Take it slow, maybe. See where it goes. I can do slow. James smiled and reached over, taking her hand. His palm was rough from work, but his grip was gentle. Summer came to the ranch in waves of heat and long golden evenings. 6 months had passed since Rebecca and her children arrived, and the place had transformed. The house looked lived in and loved. The gardens Rebecca had planted were blooming. Even the ranch seemed to run more smoothly, with everything organized and everyone working together. But the biggest change was between Rebecca and James. They were careful. So careful, nothing happened when the kids were around. But after Lily and Danny went to bed, they'd find their way to the porch, sitting close, talking about everything and nothing, sometimes holding hands, sometimes just being quiet together. Rebecca felt like a teenager again. That flutter in her stomach when she heard his truck pull up, the way her heart skipped when their eyes met across the dinner table. The constant awareness of where he was in any room. It was terrifying and thrilling at the same time, but the guilt came too. Heavy and crushing. She still wore her wedding ring. Michael's picture still sat on her nightstand. Some nights she'd lie awake wondering what he'd think. Would he want her to move on? Would he understand? Or would he feel betrayed? One evening, she was folding laundry when Lily came in and sat on the bed. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Always, sweetheart. Do you like Mr. James?" Rebecca's hand stilled on the shirt she was folding. "Of course I like him. He's been very kind to us." "No, I mean—" Lily looked at her hands. "Do you like him like Dad?" The question hit like a physical blow. Rebecca sat down next to her daughter. "Why are you asking that?" "Because you smile more when he's around. And he looks at you the way Dad used to look at you in the pictures." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Does that mean you don't love Dad anymore?" "Oh, baby." Rebecca pulled her close. "I will always love your father, always. He was the first man I loved and he gave me you and Danny. Nothing will ever change that." "But you love Mr. James too?" Rebecca took a shaky breath. "I think I might be starting to." "Is that okay with you?" Lily was quiet for a long time. "Danny and I talk about it sometimes. About how Dad's not coming back. About how Mr. James is nice and makes you happy. Danny says Mr. James is like a dad who's not Dad. And what do you think?" "I think Dad would want you to be happy. And I think Mr. James is lonely too." Lily looked up at her. "Is it bad that I like having him around? That it feels like we have a family again?" Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "No, sweetheart. It's not bad at all. It means you have a big heart with room for a lot of people." That conversation stayed with Rebecca for days. She realized her kids were healing. Moving forward, maybe it was time she did too. The next evening, after the kids were in bed, she found James in the barn. He was working on some equipment, his shirt sleeves rolled up, focused on what he was doing. "Hey," she said from the doorway. He looked up and smiled, that smile that transformed his whole face. "Hey yourself." "Kids down?" Finally, Danny wanted 3 bedtime stories. She walked closer. "Can we talk?" "Always." He set down his tools and wiped his hands on a rag. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, I've been thinking a lot lately." "About?" "About us. About this." She gestured between them. "About what we're doing." James's expression became guarded. "If you want to stop, if this is too much, I don't want to stop." The words came out firm, clear. "I'm tired of being scared. Tired of feeling guilty for being happy. Michael's gone and that's a tragedy that I'll carry forever. But I'm still here, still alive. And I think—" She took a breath. "I think I deserve to be happy again." James stepped closer. "You do, absolutely you do." Lily asked me if I liked you. Like I liked her dad. What did you tell her? I told her the truth. That I'm starting to. Rebecca looked up at him. She said Michael would want me to be happy. And she's right, he would. He'd want the kids to be safe and loved. He'd want me to have someone to lean on. "Rebecca." James's voice was rough with emotion. "I'm not saying we rush into anything. I'm not ready for that. But I'm ready to stop hiding from this, from what we feel." James reached up and cupped her face gently. His thumb brushed across her cheek. "I've been in love with you for months. Didn't know how to tell you. Didn't know if you were ready to hear it." Her breath caught. "Months?" "Since that night during the storm. Watching you take charge. Seeing how strong you are. How brave." He smiled. "Probably before that even. But that's when I knew for sure." "I'm terrified," she admitted. "Me too. Terrified I'll mess this up. Terrified of losing someone again. Terrified of a lot of things." He leaned his forehead against hers. "But I'm more terrified of not trying. Of letting fear keep me from something real." Rebecca closed her eyes, breathing him in. He smelled like work and hay and something uniquely him. "So what do? We take it one day at a time. We let the kids adjust. We figure it out together." Together. She liked the sound of that. He kissed her then, soft and careful and full of promise. Rebecca felt something in her chest unlock, something she'd been holding closed since Michael died. It hurt and felt good at the same time, like a muscle that had been cramped finally relaxing. When they pulled apart, they were both smiling. "So, we're doing this?" James asked. "We're doing this." The next few weeks felt like learning to breathe again. They were still careful around the kids, but less hidden. James would rest his hand on Rebecca's shoulder as he passed. She'd brush her fingers across his as she handed him coffee. Small touches that said everything. Danny noticed first. "Are you and Mr. James boyfriend and girlfriend?" he asked one morning at breakfast. Rebecca nearly choked on her coffee. Well, that's a grown-up question. Is that a yes? It's a maybe we're figuring it out." Danny thought about this. "Okay, but if you marry him, do I have to call him Dad?" "No one's getting married, Danny. But if you did, then you could call him whatever feels right to you. He'll always respect that your dad was your dad. Nothing changes that." "Cool. Can I have more pancakes?" Just like that, he moved on. Kids were resilient like that. They accepted things adults spent months worrying about. One Saturday, James took them all into town. They walked through the farmer's market together. To anyone watching, they looked like a family. James had Danny on his shoulders. Lily held Rebecca's hand. They bought fresh vegetables and homemade jam, and Danny talked James into buying him a toy truck. They ran into one of James's neighbors. An older woman who'd known Anna. "James Coleman, is that you?" She beamed. "And who are these lovely people?" "Mrs. Patterson, this is Rebecca and her kids, Lily and Danny. They're living at the ranch now." "Living at the ranch?" Mrs. Patterson's eyes lit up with understanding. "How wonderful. It's so good to see you happy again, James," Anna would approve. After she walked away, Rebecca looked at James. "Does that bother you? People assuming?" "No." He shifted Danny on his shoulders. "Let them assume. I don't care what people think." That evening, after the kids were asleep, they sat on the porch swing James had hung last week. Rebecca was tucked against his side, his arm around her shoulders. "The stars were incredible, like they always were out here." "I want to show you something," James said. He pulled out his phone and opened the photos. It was a picture of him and Anna, young and happy. "She was beautiful," Rebecca said. "She was, and she was good and kind and everything I needed at that time in my life." He looked at Rebecca. "But she's gone. And I spent 5 years being angry at the world for taking her. 5 years barely living. I don't want to do that anymore." "What do you want?" "I want this, you, the kids. A real life again." He kissed the top of her head. "I want to take you on a proper date. I want to hold your hand in public without worrying what people think. I want to build something with you." Rebecca's heart was so full it hurt. "I want that too. There's something else." James took a breath. "I want you to be a real partner in the ranch. Not just helping out, but making decisions with me, building it together. James, I couldn't. You already do. You've got better business sense than I ever had. The paperwork alone, you've saved me thousands in late fees and missed payments. And the kids, they're learning. Danny's already talking about ranching when he grows up. Lily loves the horses." He turned to face her. "This could be your home. Really your home. Theirs too, if you want it." Rebecca felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I do want it. So much, but what?" She touched her wedding ring. "I don't know if I'm ready to take this off yet." "Then don't, not until you are." James covered her hand with his. "There's no rush. We move at whatever pace feels right. You're really okay with that? With me still wearing another man's ring? That man gave you 2 incredible kids. He was part of making you who you are. I'm not trying to replace him or erase him." James smiled. "I'm just grateful I get to be part of what comes next." Rebecca kissed him then, putting everything she felt into it. Love and gratitude and hope and fear and possibility all mixed together. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathless. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now? Now we keep going. One day at a time. Building something good." Rebecca leaned back against him, looking up at the stars. Michael was up there somewhere, she liked to think, watching over her and the kids. She hoped he understood. Hoped he approved. Hoped he knew she would always love him, but she was learning to love again too. And that was okay. Life went on. Hearts healed. New chapters began. It didn't mean forgetting the past. Fall came to the ranch painted in gold and orange. The leaves changed, the air turned crisp, and Rebecca realized she'd been at the ranch for nearly a year. A whole year. It felt like a lifetime and yesterday all at the same time. She'd started her nursing job 3 months ago and loved it. Working at the hospital 3 days a week gave her purpose beyond the ranch. She was good at it too. The doctors and other nurses respected her skills. The paycheck wasn't huge, but it was hers. She'd already made 2 payments on her debt. Only 34 more to go, but she was doing it. On her own. The kids were thriving. Danny was doing great in 2nd grade, and he'd joined the local youth ranching club. He could already identify different cattle breeds and knew more about feeding schedules than most adults. Lily had found her passion with the horses. She spent every free moment in the barn, and James had started teaching her to train the younger horses. She was careful and patient and had a natural gift for it. Rebecca stood on the porch one evening, watching James and Danny work together to fix a section of fence. Danny was hammering with intense concentration, his tongue sticking out the way it did when he was focused. James stood close by, ready to help, but letting Danny do it himself. "They're good together." Christine's voice came from behind her. Rebecca turned. James's daughter had become a regular visitor, driving out from the city every few weeks. They'd become friends, real friends. They really are. He's different with them than I expected. Christine joined her at the railing. I thought he'd try to be their dad, you know? But he doesn't. He's just James. And somehow that works better. He respects that they had a father, that Michael will always be their dad. Rebecca smiled. And the kids love him for it. And what about you? Christine glanced at her. Do you love him for it? Rebecca's cheeks warmed. I do. I love him for a lot of reasons. Have you told him? Not in those exact words. But I think he knows. You should tell him. Dad's not great with uncertainty. Christine bumped her shoulder. He's crazy about you, you know. Talks about you all the time. You and the kids. It's actually kind of adorable. That evening, after dinner was done and the dishes were washed, James found Rebecca in the kitchen. Want to go for a walk? Always. They walked out toward the barn, the evening air cool and comfortable. The ranch was peaceful in that end-of-day way, everything settling down for the night. There's something I want to show you, James said. He led her to the barn, to a section she didn't usually go to. There was a door she'd never really paid attention to. James opened it and flicked on a light. Inside was a small apartment. One big room with a kitchenette, a bathroom, a bed. It was rough, but the bones were good. Pete and Carlos have been helping me fix this up, James said. Been working on it for a few months now. Rebecca looked around, confused. For who? For Pete. He's been wanting his own place. James ran his hand through his hair, nervous. Which would free up the bunkhouse. Make it a proper second house on the property. Okay. And I was thinking. He took a breath. Maybe that could be your place. Yours and the kids. Really yours? I'd deed it to you. Make it official. So you'd always have somewhere that's yours no matter what. Rebecca's eyes widened. James, I can't accept. Wait, let me finish. He took her hands. I know you need to feel independent. Need to know you can stand on your own. I get that. I respect it. But I also want you to know that you belong here. Not as someone who works for me or someone I'm helping out, but as a partner, as family. Her throat tightened with emotion. You really mean that, every word. He squeezed her hands. This ranch runs better with you here. The business side is finally organized. The house is a home again. But more than that, I'm better with you here, happier, more alive. The man I used to be before Anna died. James, I'm not asking you to marry me. Not yet. I know you're still working through things. But I'm asking you to really stay, to commit to building something here with me, to being a real partner in every sense. Rebecca felt tears slip down her cheeks. I want that. God, I want that so much. Yeah? Yeah, she laughed through her tears. This place is home. Your home. I love you, James. I love your grumpy morning face and your terrible coffee and the way you are with my kids. I love all of it. James's face broke into the biggest smile she'd ever seen. He pulled her close and kissed her, deep and sure and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, they were both grinning like teenagers. So we're doing this? He asked. We're absolutely doing this. They walked back to the house hand in hand. Inside, they found the kids and Pete watching a movie in the living room. Danny looked up when they came in. Mr. James, will you watch with us? James looked at Rebecca. She nodded. Go ahead. I'll make popcorn. She stood in the kitchen making popcorn and listening to the sounds of her family in the other room. Danny's laugh. Lily explaining the plot to James. Pete making commentary that made everyone giggle. This was her life now. Messy and imperfect and absolutely beautiful. The months passed. Winter came and went. Spring arrived again. Rebecca paid off more of her debt. The kids grew taller, more confident. The ranch thrived. And through it all, she and James grew closer, building something solid and real. One evening in late spring, James asked her to go for a ride. Just the two of them. They rode out to their special spot by the creek where wildflowers were blooming again. He helped her down from the horse and held her hand. I have something to ask you. Rebecca's heart started pounding. She had a feeling she knew what was coming. James pulled a small box from his pocket and got down on one knee. Rebecca, I know we said we'd take things slow, and we have. It's been almost 2 years now. 2 of the best years of my life. He opened the box, revealing a simple, beautiful ring. I'm not trying to replace Michael. I'm not trying to take his place in your heart or the kids' hearts, but I want to be your partner for whatever comes next. Will you marry me? Rebecca looked at this man who'd given her so much. Safety, home, love, a future. She thought about Michael, about the life they'd had and the love they'd shared. She thought about how far she'd come from that desperate woman sitting at a table covered in bills, thinking she had no options left. Yes, she said, tears streaming down her face. Yes, I'll marry you. James stood and slipped the ring on her finger. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her while the wildflowers swayed around them, and the creek babbled its approval. When they rode back to the ranch, the kids were waiting on the porch. They took one look at their faces and knew. Are you getting married? Lily asked, her eyes wide. We are, Rebecca confirmed. Danny ran at James full speed, hugging him around the waist. Does this mean you're going to be our stepdad? James knelt down to his level. Only if that's okay with you. It's okay. Danny looked serious. My real dad is in heaven, but I think he'd want someone to take care of us down here, and you're pretty good at it. Lily hugged them both, crying happy tears. Can I be in the wedding? You and Danny both. Wouldn't be a wedding without you two. They decided on a simple ceremony at the ranch. Nothing fancy. Just family and friends and the people who mattered. Christine helped with the planning. Pete and Carlos set up chairs in the front yard. The kids picked wildflowers for decorations. The day of the wedding was perfect. Sunny and warm with a light breeze. Rebecca wore a simple dress, nothing too formal. James wore a suit that looked uncomfortable on him, but he wore it with pride. Danny and Lily stood up with them. Christine was there, crying happy tears. Pete and Carlos dressed in their best clothes. Helen from the county assistant's office came, along with Rebecca's co-workers from the hospital, some of the ranch neighbors. People who'd watched their story unfold and rooted for them. The pastor kept it short and simple. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves. James promised to always respect her independence, to honor her past while building their future, to love her kids like his own. Rebecca promised to be his partner in everything, to help him keep Anna's memory alive while making new memories together, to never take for granted what they'd built. When they kissed, everyone cheered. Danny made a face like kids do, but he was smiling. Lily threw flower petals. It was perfect and messy and real. At the reception, which was really just a big barbecue, Danny pulled on James's sleeve. Can I call you Dad now? I mean, if you're married to Mom. James knelt down, his eyes suspiciously shiny. You can call me whatever feels right to you. Dad, James, Mr. James, I'll answer to anything. I'm just honored to be in your life. I think I want to call you Dad. Danny looked at his sister. Is that okay? Lily nodded. I think our real dad would understand. He'd want us to have a dad here with us. James hugged them both, and Rebecca watched with her heart so full she thought it might burst. This was her family now. Chosen and built from broken pieces, but strong and whole and real. Later, as the sun set and people started heading home, Rebecca and James stood together watching their kids play with the ranch dogs. Happy? James asked, pulling her close. Incredibly. She leaned into him. A year and a half ago, I was sitting in a tiny apartment thinking my life was over. Thinking I had no options, no future, no hope, and now look at us. Best decision I ever made posting that job listing. Best decision I ever made being desperate enough to take it. She laughed.